Mark and Lisa seemed like the perfect couple, the kind everyone admired from afar. But behind the smiling photos and polite greetings lay secrets that would shatter Mark's world. One ordinary evening, he discovered Lisa entangled in a shocking betrayal with his best friend Jason. What began as heartbreak quickly twisted into something far darker, revealing lies, danger, and a truth that no one could have predicted. In a story of trust, deception, and survival, Mark would soon learn that appearances can be deadly, and that the person you think is protecting you might be the one holding the key to your salvation. Mark had always believed he had it all. From the outside, his life seemed flawless. A charming house tucked in a quiet suburb, a successful career, and a marriage that friends often described as enviable. Every morning, he left for work wearing his crisp suits, confident in the stability he had built over the years. Lisa, his wife, was graceful and sociable, the type of woman who could charm anyone at a neighborhood gathering or work event. Their friends often commented on how well they complemented each other, how their laughter filled the room, and how they seemed to glide effortlessly through life's challenges together. In reality, their life was a delicate balance, carefully curated but not entirely transparent. Mark had a routine he clung to: work, home, gym, and weekend errands. But he prided himself on keeping a strong household, a place where everything seemed orderly and safe. Lisa was equally meticulous, maintaining a polished appearance, hosting dinners, and attending every social function with a smile. Mark often admired her dedication, thinking it reflected their shared commitment to the life they had created. He never suspected that the very people closest to him could harbor secrets he would never imagine. Yet beneath the surface, subtle signs began to emerge. Lisa's phone was always nearby, yet increasingly inaccessible to him. She laughed a little too loudly at messages he couldn't see, and some evenings she claimed to be busy while he noticed inconsistencies in her explanations. Mark's friends occasionally hinted at her flirtatious behavior in passing, but he dismissed it, unwilling to believe the life he had worked so hard to build could be anything but perfect. Despite these tiny anomalies, Mark clung to the image of stability, convincing himself that love and trust were enough to shield his marriage from harm. He never realized that the cracks had already begun forming, and that the facade of perfection might soon crumble in ways he could naive. Mark had started noticing things he couldn't ignore. At first, they were small: Lisa stepping out for work calls late at night, brushing off questions with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her laughter sometimes felt forced, and there were moments when she seemed distracted, staring at her phone as if it held secrets meant to exclude him. Mark tried to rationalize it, telling himself that stress or exhaustion could explain the changes. But the nagging feeling in his chest refused to fade, growing heavier with each passing day. The first real sign came when Mark accidentally caught a glimpse of Lisa's messages on her phone. They were brief and innocuous at first, casual banter that didn't seem alarming, but the frequency and timing set off alarms in his mind. She was messaging late at night, smiling at her screen when no one else was around. Mark felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Something was happening, something he wasn't meant to see. The trust he had taken for granted began to fracture with every new observation. Mark began to watch more closely. He noticed how Lisa would leave the room abruptly when he approached, or how her expressions shifted when his best friend, Jason, was mentioned. He started recalling moments that once seemed trivial, laughing together with Jason in ways that now felt intimate, sharing inside jokes that excluded him. The patterns were becoming undeniable. His mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. He began to feel both anger and fear, a mix that kept him on edge day and night. Despite the growing suspicion, Mark hesitated to confront Lisa. Part of him clung to denial, desperately hoping that his instincts were wrong. But deep down, he knew something was off. The doubt had taken root, and every smile and excuse from Lisa only strengthened it. What had once seemed like a perfect life now felt fragile, as if one wrong move could shatter everything he believed in. He realized that he could no longer ignore. One evening, Mark decided to leave work early, a strange mix of anxiety and determination driving him. The office had felt stifling all day, and his thoughts were consumed by Lisa's strange behavior. As he approached the house, he noticed that the driveway was empty and the curtains drawn. A quiet unease settled in his chest, a premonition that something was about to happen. He stepped inside, the familiar scent of home now carrying attention he had never noticed before. He wandered through the living room, listening. At first, there was nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. Then, faint laughter drifted from upstairs. It was a sound that immediately made his stomach twist. Mark's heart pounded, each step toward the bedroom heavy with dread. He paused outside the door, hesitant to enter, but curiosity and the need for clarity overpowered his fear. When he pushed the door open, the world seemed to stop. There, in the room he had once associated with safety and trust, was Lisa, his wife, entangled with his best friend, Jason. Shock rooted him to the spot. Time felt suspended as he absorbed the scene, a violent mixture of betrayal and disbelief coursing through him. Every memory of friendship, every moment of intimacy with Lisa felt tainted. The perfect life he had believed in had shattered in an instant, replaced by a raw, gut-wrenching reality. Mark's mind raced. Questions flooded in. How long had it been going on? How could someone he trusted so completely betray him so deeply? Anger simmered, but beneath it was a gnawing sense of heartbreak, a loss so profound it seemed impossible to process. He stepped back quietly, unwilling to alert them, needing a moment to collect himself. That night, the illusion of his life was gone, replaced by an urgent, burning need to understand how far the betrayal went and what he should do next. Mark didn't confront Lisa or Jason immediately. The shock of what he had seen left him frozen, and his mind churned with conflicting emotions: rage, betrayal, grief, and a desperate need for clarity. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, he decided to take control in a way that he hoped would give him the upper hand. He knew he needed proof, a way to understand the full scope of the betrayal before making any move. Over the next few days, Mark quietly researched security cameras and surveillance equipment. He didn't want to alert Lisa or Jason to his suspicions, so he installed small, discreet cameras in the house, covering hallways and key rooms where they were likely to meet. Every click of the camera's recording felt like a small reclaiming of power in a situation where he had felt utterly powerless. He reviewed the footage late into the night, analyzing movements, gestures, and interactions, piecing together the timeline of events he had previously only guessed at. As Mark watched, his anger deepened. Each frame captured laughter, whispered words, and secretive glances that now carried the weight of betrayal. He realized how easily he had been deceived, how much he had trusted the two people he thought he could rely on most. But along with the fury came a strange sense of calculation. He needed to plan carefully, not only to confront them, but to protect himself. Mark began drafting a mental strategy, imagining every possible scenario and outcome, ensuring that he would not act impulsively and lose control of the situation. In these days of silent observation, Mark's world narrowed to the recordings and the quiet hum of his thoughts. Sleep became fragmented, anxiety gnawed at him, but he felt a grim determination. The betrayal was no longer just an emotional wound. It was a puzzle, a dangerous game in which he needed every piece to survive. Mark understood that knowing the truth was only the beginning, and that what came next could change everything. One rainy night, as the wind rattled the windows and the street outside glistened under the lamplight, there was a knock at Mark's door. He hesitated, glancing through the peephole to see a man in a dark coat, holding a briefcase, his face partially obscured by the brim of his hat. Something about the visitor unsettled him, a subtle tension that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Mark opened the door cautiously, and the man introduced himself as a private investigator, though he claimed he had not been hired by Mark. The investigator's words hit Mark like a physical blow. He had been following Lisa, he said, but not for reasons Mark would have imagined. According to him, Lisa's life had been intertwined with shadows Mark could never have suspected, patterns of manipulation, deceit, and secret dealings that went far beyond an affair. Mark's mind reeled. Could the woman he loved and thought he had known completely be involved in something darker? The investigator's presence shifted the narrative entirely, introducing a level of danger Mark had never anticipated. Mark listened carefully as the investigator laid out what he had uncovered. There were records of Lisa carefully observing people, collecting information, and occasionally intervening to prevent harm, but nothing was straightforward. The man explained that Lisa had taken precautions to protect Mark without revealing the full extent of her knowledge, and that Jason's involvement was far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Mark felt a knot in his chest tighten, a mixture of fear and realization that his assumptions had been dangerously incomplete. The rainy night seemed to press in on him as he absorbed the information. The betrayal he thought he had witnessed was only the surface of a much deeper, more complex web. Suddenly, the problem was no longer just emotional. It was life-altering. Mark understood that he could no longer act blindly. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. Mark's mind raced as he prepared for the confrontation. Armed with the footage from the cameras and the shocking revelations from the private investigator, he knew that he could no longer wait. The truth had to be uncovered, and the dangerous web surrounding Jason and Lisa needed to be addressed before it was too late. Every step he took toward the house was measured, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. When he entered the living room, he noticed the tension in the air. Lisa and Jason were unaware of his presence, completely absorbed in their plans. Mark's grip tightened around the envelope containing the recordings, his eyes scanning for any indication of their intentions. He realized that what he had thought was a simple betrayal was far more sinister. Jason's behavior, once dismissed as casual and friendly, now revealed itself as manipulative and calculated. Lisa, too, seemed entangled in a scheme that went beyond mere infidelity. Mark confronted them with a calm he did not feel. The recordings played silently on his phone, showing interactions he could never unsee. His gaze moved between them, searching for answers, but what he saw was not what he expected. Jason appeared overconfident, while Lisa's expression held a strange, unreadable tension. It was then that Mark noticed a hidden envelope on Lisa's desk, partially concealed under a stack of papers. Something about it seemed deliberate, as if it had been left for him to find. Curiosity mixed with caution as he picked up the envelope and opened it. The documents inside revealed truths that made Mark's head spin. Lisa had been aware of Jason's dangerous intentions and had been gathering evidence to protect him. The affair he thought was betrayal was, in fact, a calculated ruse to gain Jason's trust and collect proof against him. Shock, relief, and disbelief collided in Mark's chest, leaving him breathless. What had begun as a story of betrayal had transformed into a story of survival, cunning. Mark's hands trembled as he sifted through the documents, each page revealing layers of deception he could never have imagined. Jason was not the man he claimed to be. Under a false identity, he carried a criminal record that spanned fraud, theft, and manipulation, an entire life carefully hidden from everyone, including Mark. Every memory of trust, every shared laugh and secret, now felt like a trap set to lure him into ruin. The realization struck like a physical blow. The person he called his best friend was the real threat all along. But the more Mark read, the more his perception of Lisa shifted. Her actions, once incomprehensible and painful, now revealed a calculated bravery. The affair had not been an act of betrayal, but a dangerous ruse designed to infiltrate Jason's schemes. Lisa had willingly placed herself in harm's way to gain his trust, to gather proof, and to protect Mark from a man who would stop at nothing to take everything from him. Every late night, every secretive conversation, every lie that had cut him to the bone was now a testament to her courage and strategy. Mark's emotions collided in a torrent of relief, astonishment, and lingering hurt. The anger he had felt toward Lisa slowly gave way to a quiet respect, tempered by disbelief at how close they had come to disaster. Jason, on the other hand, remained oblivious to the unfolding reality. He had believed he was manipulating both Mark and Lisa, confident in his own deception, blind to the careful trap being laid under his very nose. The shocking twist left Mark reeling. The betrayal he had thought shattered his world had been an illusion, a carefully constructed performance with a real danger hidden in plain sight. The people he trusted, the relationships he thought he understood, and the life he had assumed was safe all had deeper truths. In the end, the lines between betrayal and protection blurred, and Mark realized that survival often depended on seeing beyond appearances. The days after the revelation were a whirlwind of tension, relief, and cautious planning. Mark and Lisa worked closely with the authorities, carefully presenting the evidence they had gathered against Jason. Every document, every recording, and every detail from the private investigator became a crucial piece of the puzzle. Jason's true identity and criminal history left the police stunned, and the legal process moved quickly to ensure he could never harm them, or anyone else, again. For Mark, the emotional journey was far from over. The betrayal he had witnessed was real in appearance, but false in intent, and processing the layers of deception tested his ability to trust. He spent long hours reflecting on Lisa's courage, realizing that the woman he had nearly condemned had actually risked everything to save him. Slowly, he began to separate the pain he had felt from the reality of her intentions. The lines between hurt and heroism blurred, leaving a mix of gratitude, astonishment, and cautious optimism. Their marriage, once fragile under the weight of suspicion, began to heal in unexpected ways. Mark and Lisa developed a new bond, forged not from perfection but from shared survival. They learned to communicate more openly, to acknowledge the complexities of trust, and to recognize that love could persist even after deception, or perhaps because of the truths it ultimately revealed. Their friends and family, unaware of the full danger they had faced, only noticed a subtle change, a quiet resilience, a strength in their partnership that had not been visible before. Yet, even as the immediate threat was neutralized, Mark could not shake a lingering wariness. The world, he realized, could be more deceptive than he had ever imagined. Appearances were fragile, trust was a fragile currency, and danger could hide in the most familiar places. But with Lisa by his side, he felt prepared to face whatever came next. The perfect life he had once imagined had crumbled,